What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today I wanted to talk about how to maximize your downtime in between adventures, still at the table, in order to encourage character development, relationship building, and world exploration, and give you the tools necessary to do this effectively so that you can create a stronger sense of immersion and realism in your game and build a sense of camaraderie with your character and the other player characters as well. And allow your GM to be in on it to make things that much better. So let's kick things off with character development. We're talking about how rather than focusing solely on leveling up and gaining new character class abilities and stuff like that, taking downtime is an opportunity to explore the more personal side of your character and exploring how they are working through the events of their backstory in the present day. So let's say that your rogue, as part of their backstory, used to be part of a nefarious thieves guild that didn't have any sense of moral code. They stole from anybody that they could, and the only thing that concerned them was the weight of the things that they were trying to pick up and steal. And your rogue realized that this is wrong. Like, we shouldn't be taking advantage of the innocent and marginalized and the people that can't defend themselves. We should be helping them and protecting them. And so your rogue is on this journey of atonement and redemption over the course of the campaign. Using downtime as an opportunity to explore that. Have the rogue go make contact with some old people that they knew were loosely associated with the Thieves Guild and try to bring them onto their side of thinking, try to get them to walk away from the Thieves Guild. Or even trying to make plans to make a direct attack on the Thieves Guild or undercut an operation that they have coming up. Or, and this might venture more into like potential personal adventures down the road, but they can begin exploring stealing back some of the things that they stole, taking the fight directly to the old Thieves Guild to take some of the gold, some of the treasured possessions, and give them back to those people that they took advantage of in the past. Practicing or improving skills that your character wants to be good at. Perhaps the bard is spending the downtime trying to write their next big hit based on the previous adventure, or the wizard is spending a lot of time in their lab trying to perfect an alteration to a spell to make it the correct damage type for the dragon that they're going to go kill later on. These moments not only help flesh out your character's daily life, but provide a fun in-character opportunity to role play what your character is doing and how their class skills and their character skills interact with the real world. And additionally, don't forget about personal projects. As opposed to focusing on the skills that your characters have, what do they like to do in their free time? Maybe the paladin has taken up painting in order to show the beauty of their deity's creation. Or the druid is working on a community garden in an urban part of the city that your party lives in order to bring their love of nature to this community and into the city in a very real way. These kind of moments can really open up your character and reveal their personality and their passions to the rest of the party and to the GM so that they can incorporate those things into their character's interactions with your character or into the larger adventure moving forward. Now I know what you're thinking. Eric, this all sounds great and like a lot of fun, but how do I make sure that I'm not hoarding the spotlight for my character by introducing all of these downtime activities that I want them to do and not make my other players or my GM frustrated with me wanting to do all these things and delaying the adventure that's on the horizon? I'm glad you asked. Good question. Keep them coming. First and foremost, communicate. Communicate with your GM and your fellow players about your intentions to want to engage in these kind of activities, either at session 0 or the session prior to when it makes sense that there's going to be some downtime. If you're just coming off of an adventure and there's not a pressing time-sensitive thing right there next up, say at the end of that session, hey, I would like to spend the next session maybe exploring some downtime in the city. I have some non-player characters I want to go talk to. I have some activities that I want to do. So yeah, could we do that? And by doing this, you will not only be letting your GM know, hey, these are the things that I would like you to be prepared to engage with my character on next session, but you're also opening up the floor to your fellow players to start thinking about, oh, what do I want my character to be doing during their downtime that this player character is going to be doing? What can I be up to? And you might have a player at your table that just does not enjoy engaging in this type of stuff during the sessions. If they've never done it before, if you've never done it before, I would encourage you to give it a shot for the aforementioned reasons and the reasons that we're going to be talking about for the rest of this video. But if you have somebody that just does not enjoy engaging in that stuff, you're setting up the proper expectations for them to where they're not going to be sitting at the table itching to get going, thinking that there is an end to all of this nonsense. They know going into the session, hey, Some players want to do some downtime activities, and once those are wrapped up, we will move on. But we're going to kick off with those type of activities. Second, be mindful of pacing. When you're engaging in these downtime activities, try to focus on the most interesting and impactful parts of this activity. If your character is wanting to create a shrine to their deity, then don't get caught up in the minutia of going to buy the lumber for the construction of the shrine. Focus on the big moments, finding the perfect site that your deity guided you to, blessing the site for the first time, recruiting the NPC that is going to be the caretaker for the shrine while you're off on adventures. Those are moments that are worth role-playing out and engaging with. Focus on those and skip over the other stuff. Lastly, remember that you're part of a team. While it is fun to explore your character's personal stories during your downtime, it can be equally as fun and rewarding to weave your stories together. Perhaps you are in the party with this rogue that we mentioned earlier in the video that's on a path to redemption and atonement, and you play a cleric who is happy to see the rogue on this path, and you want to encourage them. Now, you have a shrine thing that you want to do and some other like prayer, like cleric-y stuff, and also you have a hobby where you like to go play chess in the park, but you decide for this downtime, I'm going to, for my downtime slot, seek out the rogue, and I'm just going to have a conversation with them about, hey, I'm really proud of the work that you're doing. I'm proud of the progress that you're making. And I know that when it comes to morality and what's right and wrong, we don't often see eye to eye. But to help you on this path, I'm willing to meet you in the middle. What do you need from me? There are obviously some lines that I'm unwilling to cross, but there's some grayness in my deity's domain to where I might be able to push the envelope a little bit in order to help you on this path. That can be such a great story. And the next time downtime comes up, maybe when the rogue player steps up to say what they want to do for their downtime, they can turn to you and be like, hey, I think it would be really cool if our characters work together during this downtime for my personal thing. And then that's going to be a much more fulfilling and rewarding scene because now the party is coming together in little ways. And there's a perfect segue because we've talked about using downtime to develop your individual characters, but what about the group dynamic? Downtime can be a phenomenal chance to strengthen the sense of community and camaraderie within the party as a whole. And first things first, the simplest one, engage in some fun role-playing conversations, either around the campfire as you all are settling down to take a long rest after a day of journeying through the woods, or when you're sitting down to have a meal together. And take the opportunity to just share adventuring stories, communicate your backstory in character to your fellow party members, or engage in friendly banter about what went wrong on the last adventure in a very playful and jovial kind of way. Conversations can reveal new layers to the various characters around the table and create a good sense of camaraderie within the party. And another really fun way to encourage this kind of in-character relationship building is through in-character games and competition. Maybe the bard challenges the rest of the party to a game of fantasy poker, or the fighter, barbarian, and paladin get into a verbal sparring match about who the better hand-to-hand combatant is. And the ranger proposes, why don't we have a little sparring tournament? See really who is the best toe-to-toe fighter in the party. Non-lethal damage, of course, and cleric just stand by in case the fireball goes astray. These activities not only foster team building, but also create really memorable moments that might outshine the more epic moments throughout your campaign. What are you more likely to talk about? The time that the party escaped from prison, or the insane upset when the bard beat the fighter in a fist fight? Another great way to enhance the group dynamics within your party is to introduce group projects that the party needs to work on together, whether it's opening a tavern as an additional revenue stream because they have all this gold and they just want to invest it in something that can generate more gold, and all the party's different skills can be applied to running the tavern in a unique way. Or maybe the party wants to build a hideout or a secret base that they can plan the rest of their moves during the campaign from, and the party's different skill sets can lend themselves to the different accommodations and aspects of this hideout, with the rogue developing a spy network, the fighter training up the guards, the wizard making the arcane laboratory and the magical defenses. These projects not only serve a practical purpose, but they also give a sense of unity and shared purpose to your group. And lastly, do not be afraid to explore in-character conflicts during downtime. I'm going to say it again. In-character conflicts during downtime. Just like in any group of people, it's natural for disagreements and misunderstandings to come up while they're out in the field together. Use downtime to address these things in a mature, in-character way, or if it's wholly in character, it's fine to get a little immature. Sometimes you just need to punch someone else across the face to make your point in character. Allow your characters to work through their differences and grow stronger as a team. Another fantastic aspect of downtime is the opportunity it provides for character development, both narratively and mechanically. Ever wondered how to justify a character's sudden new abilities or the decision to dip into a new class? Downtime is a perfect opportunity to ground those decisions in the game world. For instance, let's say your rogue got hit with a really nasty spell on the last adventure and they realize they don't understand magic in a meaningful way. It's just something they've never really engaged with. And so they've decided to study the arcane arts during their downtime. They talk to the wizard and borrow some books or go to the arcane library in town. And they sit down and you role play them studying and talking with some other magic users to gain a greater base understanding to the point where they can actually cast a few spells on their own. The player may have had a totally different reason for why they wanted to dip their rogue one level into wizard. But the character has a completely different reason that is grounded in the game world, and you can role play that. Similarly, downtime can be used to explore level ups where you're gaining new abilities. Perhaps the fighter spends some extra time in the training yards honing their skill, and they figure out how to utilize their momentum in just the perfect way to unlock an extra attack during that 6-second window that they attack in. Or the cleric, having their faith shaken a bit on the last adventure, spends a good deal of time in prayer at the shrine that they've built, speaking to their deity, communicating with them, communing with them, and in return, the deity grants them a little bit extra power for the adventures moving forward. By using downtime to justify this in-character progression, you not only make the game seem more realistic and immersive, but you also create a richer narrative for your character's development mechanically. And who knows, these moments might create new opportunities for story arcs or passion projects for the character. So now we've discussed character development, strengthening the group dynamics, and all the character stuff, but what about the wider game world? Downtime can be a phenomenal opportunity for you to make connections with NPCs, dive deep into the lore of the setting, or just explore interesting locations in the world that your GM is laying out before you. First up, let's talk about NPCs. Now, it's a blast to talk to the quest givers and the important story figures in your game world, but don't forget about the smaller, more intimate moments that you can have with characters that don't have any larger significance to the story. Use downtime to strike up conversations with local townsfolk, merchants, and other background characters, and you'll be shocked at the wealth of information that you can get from these non-player characters. And depending on how your GM handles it, these conversations can lead to new allies, contacts, or even side quests down the road. For example, your character might take the time to get to know the local blacksmith in town and ask them, hey, I've always had an interest in learning smithing. Can I watch and work with you, and you take some time to teach me? I'm more than willing to pay for your time. And over the course of the time that they're spending with this dwarf blacksmith, they learn that this dwarf style is actually hearkening back to an older time for his people that they feel like is a lost art and that just isn't as highly regarded anymore. And in order to actually be able to do this style in the way that they want to, there's actually a specialized hammer that all the molds have been lost. It's impossible to make it anymore. He's read about it, but there's no actual physical descriptions of this style of hammer. And if only they had that, then they could really dive into their passion and what they want to do. Then maybe the player character says, hey, there's an ancient dwarf mine that we were near during the last adventure, gang. Maybe in order to help out the blacksmith, we could delve down there and see if we can find some of the old smithing materials. It'd go a long way to making him happy. And maybe we can get a discount on armor down the road. Who knows? But it can lead to exciting and engaging stories. Exploring the lore of the world is another fantastic use of your downtime, whether it's studying ancient tomes that discuss an artifact that you discovered on the last adventure, or talking to local merchants about the trade routes that used to be utilized in between the towns before the war happened. Or they spend their nights at the tavern listening to stories of legendary heroes and their battles in a time gone by. Spending this time engaging with the lore of the world can actually provide greater context for the campaign and the adventures the players are taking part in, which can make things more exciting and, once again, more immersive. And additionally, you can use downtime to interact with your character's actions and the larger world. Maybe the bard, in trying to learn some new music and see what other songs are out there, comes across a song about their party and the adventures that they did like 3 towns over, that there's now a bard over there writing songs about what the party. Or the druid can seek out members of other circles and start creating a network of druids that, while they don't all practice the same style of druid craft, they can work together to preserve nature throughout the world. I know you're thinking, that all sounds great, Eric, but what if my DM doesn't have any of this stuff planned because they don't know that I'm planning on doing all these cool downtime activities? Once again, another great question. Keep them coming. But like we talked about before, communication is key when trying to engage in this type of gameplay. Your GM has to know that this is what you're wanting to do next session so that they can appropriately plan. Some GMs are really good at improv. Some GMs can pull these type of story beats out from nowhere and be able to make you think that they had this planned all along. But do your GM a favor. Let them know that you're wanting to do some of these things during the downtime that you all have between adventures. Plus, this is a chance for you and the GM to collaborate on things like world building or your character's development so that things can be more engaging and holistic for everyone at the table. If you want to research an artifact during your downtime, letting the GM know will allow them to not only develop their own lore about the artifact or discover the settings lore about that artifact, but they can also potentially plan a side quest or a mini adventure surrounding your research, presenting new stories and challenges for the whole group. We talked a little bit about earlier developing your characters' bonds together through shared activities, but I did want to take another opportunity to circle back around to personal bonding with other party members, which I do think is a completely separate thing. Downtime provides an opportunity for party members to not only bond as a whole, but have meaningful one-on-one interactions to develop strong party relationships. Perhaps your party's rogue and cleric both grew up worshiping in a temple of the silver moon, for example. Now, not the same temple, but just they shared that upbringing. And by talking with one another, they can share the differences in their experiences within this faith and why the cleric felt strengthened through their experiences, whereas the rogue perhaps drifted away from those experiences, leading them to become a rogue. This exploration of personal backstories not only reveals new aspects of these two party members, but provides them a level of understanding with each other's stories that they may not have had. Alternatively, you could even develop, if the players want to, a mentor-mentee relationship. Perhaps the party sorcerer, who's a wild magic sorcerer, is having a hard time controlling their magic, and so they seek out the party's druid, who seems to have a much more calm, collected, serene demeanor when they're casting, and they seek out, how do I gain that level of understanding of how my magic works? How do I calm my mind in order to control this magic that I have? It might not bear any fruit mechanically, but it's an interesting narrative relationship. Don't forget about moments of vulnerability. Perhaps the proud warrior fighter of the party in a moment of vulnerability can be talking with the party's bard and reveal her fear of not living up to her family's legacy, her family of proud warriors. These intimate conversations can lead to meaningful moments between player characters. And they can also lead to opportunities for character development and character change, as well as strengthening the relationship between the party members. Now, these especially should not be instances where you just dive in with another player without really prepping. Planning for these character bonding moments can make them so much richer and deeper when both people are on the same page going into a scene together. So before initiating a conversation or interaction, approach the other player away from the table, even via messaging apps or in person, and pitch your idea. Hey, I had the thought, my rogue and your cleric, as part of our backstory, both are associated with the Temple of the Silver Moon, and I thought it'd be interesting if we had a conversation about our upbringing in the temple and why your cleric became a cleric of the Silver Moon, whereas my rogue ran away from the faith. What ideas do you have, or what would you like to explore in a scene like that? Opening up the table for them to have a conversation about the scene, as opposed to feeling like you are dictating something to them and their character. And it's important to remember that not everybody is comfortable with certain topics or styles of interaction. So be sure to communicate and be respectful of your fellow players' boundaries, and be open to adjusting your ideas if needed. Some players do not have any desire for any kind of romance to enter the game on their end with their player character. And so if you had the idea that you and another player's character might be developing something and they simply say, I'm so sorry, I'm not interested in anything like that, respect that and adjust it to, it seems like our characters have a connection. So what if it was just a really strong sibling style friendship? Is that something you'd be more comfortable with? And if they are, then you can go with that. Or if they're still uncomfortable, then move on. But try to find the balance between planning and improvisation. You don't want to script out the scene word for word. I would encourage you to come up with the prompt for the scene together. Hey, I want to talk about our character's shared relationship regarding the Temple of the Silver Moon. Okay, yeah, my character is really ingrained into it and had a really positive experience. So if your character had a negative experience, maybe it can be a revelatory thing for my character to realize that not everybody had the same experience as them. And the player controlling the role can be like, totally. And I think my character will also have a similar kind of response to, oh, some people actually find meaning and purpose in this. And then leave it at that. Let the scene play out beyond that. Start obviously at the beginning of the conversation, but then once you hit that point where you've reacted, then get into the improvisation, because both of you are bought in, you've established boundaries, and you know where the scene is going. So then you can have fun riffing off each other and seeing where the scene will develop spontaneously. Quick caveat that's not in the script though. If you're at a table and two players having a really cool bonding scene like this, they probably talked about it and planned it out, or at the very least feel comfortable having a scene like this together. Your character should not just walk into the room or pop on by and insert themselves in the scene. Respect what other players have set up, and this is different for every table. Some tables it's much more open and fine with people interjecting themselves into scenes, but at the very least, you should, at a time that makes sense where there's a lull in the role play, ask, hey, I feel like my character would have something interesting to contribute to this scene. Is it okay if I come in? And if you are on the other side of that question, feel comfortable and empowered in saying no. If you have a specific idea for a scene that you're role-playing with another character, developing a bond with them, have the trust at the table to where the other player will understand if you say, I really want to focus on what we're doing here, and then maybe in the next scene, we can introduce your character. There you have it. Keep in mind that the biggest thing for maximizing your downtime in a tabletop role-playing game session is communication. Communicate with your GM, your fellow players about what you want to do, who you want to do it with, and what you would like to get out of those scenes. These can introduce a new level of depth and vulnerability to your characters and the stories that they are telling, both individually and as a group. And if you want some more ideas on more advanced player techniques, then go check out the video right there.